Self-portraits have been a powerful form of artistic expression throughout history, allowing artists to explore not only their external appearance, but also their identity, emotions, and deeper psychological states. Through this introspective gaze, artists showcase their inner world, often revealing their struggles, vulnerabilities, and yearnings. Today, I will show you what I consider to be the most disturbing self-portrait in history, painted by one of the strangest, most eerie, and elusive artists, Léon Spilliaert, a man who painted during the night due to chronic insomnia and pain that rarely allowed him to sleep. You may have never heard of him, as museums did not invest in his work. He practically lived by selling his paintings to the middle class, who saved and appreciated his style, but not to major collectors or prominent institutions of the time. Get ready to discover one of the most enigmatic artists you'll ever encounter, and let's unravel the terrible life that led him to paint such terrifying self-portraits as this one. Let's begin. Personally, I believe that artists paint what is closest to them. Léon Spilliaert, as a child, was a lonely and sickly boy. From a young age, he compulsively sketched and drew scenes of everyday life in the rural areas of Belgium. His biography mentions that he was self-taught. However, it is known that he began studying at the Fine Arts School in Bruges at the age of 18, but he couldn't complete the course due to an illness. His inspiration for creating these works came from the surroundings where he lived: nocturnal wanderers, deserted beaches, and dikes, all enveloped in a nightmarish atmosphere. In his paintings, tragedy seems to be chewed over, conveying a profound sense of anguish and loneliness. His works are heavily influenced by the tides, as Léon walked along a stretch of coastline at dawn and midnight every day, and he knew all of this by heart. While other artists, like Sorolla, painted beaches filled with children bathing in the sun, Spilliaert chose to depict solitude. His beaches were dramatically empty, and his landscapes seemed filled with vanished presences, a kind of ghosts or wandering souls that imparted a feeling of unease and fret. In 1904, he was in Paris, but he did not approach Picasso's circle. He never showed interest in those styles, although he always acknowledged being influenced by Munch and Toulouse-Lautrec. Influences from James Ensor, Odilon Redon, and Fernand Léger, all symbolist painters, can also be seen in his paintings. Some critics have compared his work to that of Edward Hopper. While both painted silence, Spilliaert's silence was much more macabre, unsettling, and threatening. We also have to consider that during that time, Spilliaert was reading Nietzsche and Edgar Allan Poe. At 21, he moved to Brussels as an illustrator and worked on many of Poe's books. One of the things I admire most about this artist is his self-portraits, which are haunting and seem to depict his soul directly, hence the title of the video. Almost all of them are monochromatic, and many were painted in the early 20th century. His self-portraits appear to be his own ghosts. One of my favorites is this one, where he is seated in a chair with a drawing board, wearing an expression that seems otherworldly, surrounded by everyday objects like a gas lamp, a coat rack, and an umbrella. There is a play of mirrors that makes him appear as a spectre trapped in a box of shadows. We know that Spilliaert was born into a family where his grandfather was a lighthouse keeper and his father owned a perfumery. He even portrayed himself in that perfumery. Another aspect I particularly like about this artist is how he captured melancholy like no one else. On many occasions, he painted solitary figures in dreamlike spaces. Looking at his paintings, one feels an absolute silence. There is no sound. Imagine this painter, who besides being restless, was insomniac, hardly slept, and suffered from stomach ulcers from a young age. He often got up at night to take long walks along the coast and through lonely streets where he might encounter vagabonds, drunks, or even solitary people like himself. This explains why his art is filled with unease and silence. In many of his paintings, you can see completely empty staircases or promenades, vast stretches of sand, and of course the Black Sea screaming again and again. Another of my favorite paintings is The Gust of Wind, where a girl is seen on the stairs of a pier. The wind lifts her dress, but if you look closely, there is a scream on her face. It reminds me of Munch's famous scream, but this would be Spilliaert's scream. People who knew him say that in winter, in his town, the streets were empty, the sky overcast, and it seemed as if the entire population had either left or died. The beach was deserted, and only a small figure could be seen in the distance, which could have been a man or a spirit. Now that we know his story, it's easier to understand why his self-portraits are so dark. In Self-Portrait with Mirrors, painted in 1908, we find one of Spilliaert's most unsettling and disturbing works, a piece that moves away from conventional self-portraits and dives into a space of almost supernatural introspection. The painting presents Spilliaert in the foreground, but his face appears distorted, almost ghostly, as if the reflection is disintegrating or fading into the surrounding darkness. The dark and muted color palette reinforces this oppressive atmosphere, with grays, browns, and blacks dominating the scene. This use of color, combined with the dim lighting, creates a feeling of emptiness, of a space that seems to absorb the viewer. The theme of the mirror is crucial in this piece. Mirrors have traditionally been used in art as a way to reflect truth or identity, but in this painting, the reflection appears deformed, suggesting a crisis of identity or internal struggle. Spilliaert does not represent himself realistically. Instead, he distorts his face, turning it into a spectral figure. This could be interpreted as a metaphor for alienation or the disintegration of the self. The artist doesn't see himself clearly. Instead, his reflection seems to fade into the darkness, like an echo of his own existence. Behind the protagonist, the mirror reflects objects that, though familiar, also seem to lose their definition. We can vaguely make out what appears to be a gas lamp and a glass clock. These everyday elements, so sharp in other contexts, become strange and almost unreal in this scene, submerged in an atmosphere of twilight. The clock in particular may carry profound symbolism associated with the passage of time and inevitable mortality, recurring themes in Spilliaert's work. The piece conveys a deep sense of loneliness and despair, which may reflect Spilliaert's personal struggles. As mentioned before, he suffered from chronic insomnia and health issues, leading him to spend entire nights wandering the streets of Ostend. This painting seems to capture that moment between wakefulness and sleep, when the mind dissociates from reality and the boundaries between what is real and imagined blur. Self-Portrait with Mirrors is a masterpiece of introspection, a haunting representation of a man confronting his own ghosts. The viewer not only observes the artist, but is also compelled to contemplate their own reflection and the shadows that dwell within. If you found this artist as fascinating as I do, I invite you to visit our catalogue, where you'll find a collection dedicated to Spilliaert and his best works. You can purchase one of his pieces to hang in your home for a lifetime, or even a phone case to protect your device. Shipping is completely free worldwide. You'll find a link in the description. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this artist. Let me know in the comments what you think of his work. Personally, he's one of my favorites, along with Goya, as many of you know. Thank you for sticking around until the end. Don't forget to leave a like if you found the video interesting, and subscribe to see 2 videos like this every week. See you in the next video. Bye!